Hello and welcome everyone from NeoSTEM. I'm really excited to have a conversation today with somebody new, not new to us, but new in a role. And if you were in our most recent meeting, you've already met her. But in case you weren't, I just wanted to have an opportunity to introduce you to Ebony Hood, who, if you haven't heard already, is taking over from Alyssa and becoming the new leader of the NeoSTEM initiative. Ebony, I'm so excited to have you joining this team, to lead this team, and to talk with you today. Can you talk to us a little bit about your history and your past and kind of how you ended up in the STEM world?
Sure. So I want to go all the way back to being like in a womb. No, I'm just teasing. No, literally, I want to say during my childhood, I had a chance to do overnighters at COSI, the Center of Science and Industry in Columbus, and we had to run the entire museum. So we would be all over the place. And it's COSI, right? So everything is hands-on, everything is interactive. Between that and maybe camping as a young kid, where you just kind of catch bugs, see what they're doing. I may have killed a few bugs in my youth. Sorry, bugs. As an adult, I feel so bad about that. I just think the combination of all those things have pretty much just sparked this curiosity inside of me as it relates to all things STEM.
I love that. My mom was a Girl Scout leader, and I used to sort of tag along on a lot of the trips, and we did that. She did that COSI trip a couple of times with my sister and all her friends, and it was frankly one of the best experiences of my life. And I love that when we have a chance, when our young people have a chance to be inspired by things like museums and experiences. And I wonder what you think about the importance of that and how we might begin to address making sure that all youth in Cleveland have those types of experiences.
Sure. So I will definitely say I was lucky enough to have those overnight experiences. As a kid, you have no idea, who orchestrated it. Your parents sent you away with someone, to go have fun. But I'll say the most important thing I think about being connected to STEM, outside of an overnight trip at COSI that happened like once a year, STEM learning for me was pretty much in the house outside, so if you think about going out to the playgrounds or getting on your bike and hanging out with friends, or quite frankly, when you're just home by yourself, I was the queen of making potions in the house, so you would get the vinegar and the baking soda and ketchup, you would mix all these things. I think it's still just sparking curiosity in general to just get youth involved. So it's not necessarily centered around museums all the time, even though I was lucky enough to have that experience. But that's the part where I mentioned like even catching bugs outside. So, little roly-polies, lightning bugs, all those things are accessible to most people just in any like urban setting, which I grew up in Cleveland. So, if I wasn't camping, I was just in the neighborhood, hanging out at night. So I just want to make sure that we just have an understanding that everything doesn't have to take place inside of our museums, but it's definitely a bonus. But you can have fun at home and, right outside and parking lots and in your driveway.
Yeah, it's about finding STEM wherever we are, right? Whether it's super formal like school or informal like museums or super informal like around home. And what's interesting to me about that with you is I don't know about everybody who's part of NeoSTEM, but when you first started participating with us, there was kind of like a little question mark light bulb. Is there a question mark light bulb in my brain that went off? Because I was thinking, well, sure, there's absolutely STEM everywhere, but the sewer district, can you talk a little bit about what those connections are between your old position that you just left at the sewer district and STEM as sort of a way to be thinking about how STEM is or can be everywhere?
Sure. So the sewer district serves as one of my favorite like storytelling moments when it comes to STEM. I have a natural affinity to water. We're in a Great Lakes region, and having access to fresh water resources is absolutely amazing. I know this as an adult, didn't necessarily care about it as a child. We would go swimming at the beach. We had our fun in the water, but I wasn't necessarily thinking about the value of the Great Lakes to our region. So I grew up, you learn about watersheds. I got excited about that. I started doing an internship internship with West Creek Conservancy, and I was like digging deeper into restoration projects, just learning a heck of a lot more. And when it came to the sewer district, I was, again, clueless about that realm of work. We all know, number twos have to go somewhere, right? They do. And once I started learning the infrastructure in our area, I'm like, wow, sewers are everywhere. So I annoy my family. I am like the infrastructure person. So when we're on vacations, I'm like, oh, there's a wastewater treatment plant. I see it. Oh, there's a combined sewer. There it is. I can see the overflow right over there. So STEM is everywhere, especially as it relates to like the work of the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, the creeks, the streams, all those things. They're just present and prevalent. And to be able to connect like youth and even adults, and to have them understand like the hydrology, as well as like water conveyance in our region, gosh, to me, it's just an amazing thing to talk about. And you get to have like poop jokes, and everyone gets it. You get to say gas and fart and number two, and no one cares because it's the sewer district.
I love it. And it sounds like you had and still have a lot of passion for that work. So I'm curious, you clearly, really liked what you were doing, but something drew you over to this work with NeoSTEM. And I'm curious what that was. What was the spark that when you heard that that Alyssa was looking to step down, and we were starting to examine and explore for new leadership? What was the spark that made you say, well, maybe that's the job for me?
Well, I think the biggest connection is that at the sewer district, we're kind of a one track kind of industry. It's all about water. With STEM, I get to talk about water, air and nature. I get to bring in so many more facets. So even though the industry calls for so many STEM careers, actually focusing on STEM education as a whole, you can talk about a little bit of everything. And I always, felt like it might have been weird to talk about space. Yes and no, because we talk about having to do your number ones and number twos in space, but you know what I'm trying to say. I guess it's just opening up way more opportunities that's not necessarily just stuck on the water industry. But again, I've always been a fan of water. We need it. So I will never, never, never lose that passion for water.
And it's such as you mentioned, such a unique resource that we have available to us in Cleveland. So I know I'm excited to see, because I don't know, but I imagine that over time, we're going to end up seeing some initiatives or ties back to the water, which hasn't really been a focus of NeoSTEM so far, but absolutely could be. And so with that in mind, I wonder, what are your plans for kind of the short term, these next several months as you're getting your bearings, and more the mid and long term over the next year or 2 years? What do you hope to accomplish and see as the leader of the NeoSTEM ecosystem?
Sure thing, Jeremy. So a lot of my passion lies in community, building relationships, all these different things, meeting people where they are, trying to, find out about their backgrounds, how they're connected, what's their sense of place of being, in Cleveland, in the Northeast Ohio area. So I'm thinking about mainly focusing on a lot of relationship building. So again, like having a conversation with a colleague, or maybe it's an educator, maybe it's our library systems. We have so many different ways to connect to the NeoSTEM ecosystem. And for me to deepen those relationships, I come with a lot, but there's also many more people, that's been in our cause and been in our meetings. So when I think about that initial work, it'll just be connecting people, me to people, NeoSTEM to people, and just getting the word out there even more as it relates to Ebony now stepping into that place. Long term, when you mention, hey, our region and how it's unique, again, to me, it's just a win-win to talk about, being in a Great Lakes region. It's a fascinating story. Climate is still going to be an issue. I see that always coming up in our foreseeable future, probably for 50 years straight, before we figure this thing out. So more and more conversations about freshwater resources will be at the forefront. And I don't think it's a bad connection or a bad topic to connect with Northeast Ohio. So again, if we think about like branding ourselves or thinking about how we can look to others, if you were to default to a Great Lake, that's still a great story. It's still an awesome story. So that's how I think about those long-term experiences, mainly just giving people an opportunity that when they think about certain things, it's just going to automatically default to NeoSTEM.
I love that. And I know that you've talked about this before, but I think it bears mentioning that traditionally in NeoSTEM, we have kind of focused on sort of downtown Cleveland proper. And I know that a passion of yours is bringing this content out further out into neighborhoods, into homes, into schools, into places that are maybe more accessible. Can you talk a little bit about that focus?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, downtown Cleveland proper, it's just one piece part. And if you're a neighborhood person, I can tell you that Cleveland is known for its neighborhoods. I grew up Lee Harvard, southeast side of Cleveland. You have that name recognition, Glenville, Clarkfoot. You're just going to hear all these people shouting out Cam's Corner, all their different special places in Cleveland. And when you kind of step away from being in downtown Cleveland or thinking about our professional sports teams, and now you're just kind of filtering out at the neighborhood level, there is a lot of culture at each of those levels and so much to be learned. Some neighborhoods have like old industry, maybe it's industry that have closed there, but there's relics of old buildings, all these different opportunities to connect like the historical culture of how we were as an industrial city to what we're now, becoming today. So when I think about NeoSTEM at the neighborhood level, it's definitely like focusing in on what's the culture of that particular neighborhood and what can we bring to life. Maybe it's the churches, maybe it's the bakery that's still open on the corner that's been there, for 30 plus years. All those different things can be special ways to connect STEM at the neighborhood level.
I know that, and you and I have talked about this before, but I've done some work with the Metropolitan School District, and there have been times when I've worked in some neighborhood schools, and because this sort of concept was interesting to me, I asked, and I'd ask a class of fourth graders, how many of you have been downtown or to one of the museums? And in some classes, it was 2 or 3 hands went up out of the class. So if we really want to change outcomes and make new opportunities for everybody in all of greater Cleveland, all of Northeast Ohio, then we've got to figure out ways to reach those kids who aren't necessarily leaving their neighborhoods and coming to these events. But I think, and I want to confirm with you that doesn't mean that we're going to stop with some of this downtown focus things. I know we've got this big initiative with the Cavs ramping up and partnerships with different downtown organizations and the museums and all of those things. And I think that those will still continue. Would you, is that right?
We could definitely etch that in stone, Jeremy. It's definitely going to happen. We have to do both. I always say when there is a complex like level of need, you tackle everything. I know that just, it can seem overwhelming, but we can push ourselves. Human beings are amazing people. If we can send folks into orbit and bring them back, in a few hours, we could definitely start making headway to figure out how to handle Cleveland proper and neighborhood levels, to figure out how to take like, let's say the learning that you would get at a museum and actually bring it into a community. You can have traveling resources that can bridge those gaps and make it happen. And another exciting thing, like I like to call the silver linings of the pandemic, we have even touched on all of these virtual opportunities. So, a lot of my learning comes from old-fashioned books, comes from watching TV, where I've been drawn to like national parks and, waterfalls and, oh my gosh, look at that huge tree. I want to go see that place. So the virtual world, it kind of gets a bad rap, but if we think about how we imagine things as a child, it wasn't because we were necessarily in Hawaii. It was probably because we were just watching some program, or something like that. We saw it in the background. Or today I think about social media. We have TikTok and Facebook and Twitter, so we get to see people's live feeds in these places. So we kind of get a sneak peek into experiencing the world around us without having to actually be there. So that's why I think we'll have the power of like making those STEM connections any way we can.
Ebony, I've really loved learning a little bit more about you and about your viewpoints. everyone who's listening to this, I think this is just Jeremy speaking, but I think Ebony's right. I think we can do this, but we can only do it with all of you. This isn't a thing that I can do or Ebony can do. It's only something that we can do when we bring together all of the foundations, the business, the industry, the schools in all of Northeast Ohio and combine and pool those resources. I'm very, very excited about the next couple of years, Ebony, and I'm very excited about what you're going to bring to NeoSTEM. So thank you for joining as the leader of this initiative, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Jeremy. Glad to be here.
Bye, everyone.